What's up, college football addicts? Today we're going to talk about two things in play that could rapidly end the ACC lawsuits against both FSU and Clemson. Plus, as we told you guys, we are going to dive deep into the mailbag to cover the best posts from the last few videos. But before we start, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button. We know that we're your official Conference Realignment headquarters here, and we would like you to do us the favor of hitting that sub button. Help us grow the channel as quick as we possibly can. All right, so the very first thing that could rapidly end the ACC lawsuits, let's go to our mailbag. David posted that reports are starting that UNC and North Carolina State are most likely to join forces together to file suit to exit the ACC, as UNC was waiting on both FSU and Clemson, according to 247 Sports. Now, David, thank you very much for the comment. If you remember back, UNC and NC State were two of the other colleges than Clemson and FSU who were blocking Cal, Stanford, and SMU. And after weeks of Notre Dame's political pressure, NC State ended up folding. I think it's very likely that North Carolina will be the next team to file. However, there's a chance that North Carolina and NC State could join forces. Say, for instance, that UNC was willing to take less than 100% payout for entry into the SEC. Let's say they take an 80% payout to kind of cover some of the difference for NC State. Even at 80%, both schools would still be making $30 to $40 million more per year than they would in the ACC. And maybe that 80% only happens for a limited period of time. You avoid having to fight the Board of Governors, and it sounds like a win-win scenario. If this happened, it would absolutely destroy the ACC. The conference would have no choice but to quickly settle after losing these two teams from their home state of North Carolina. Now, the next thing that could rapidly end the ACC lawsuits, let's go back to our mailbag. Mr. McLovin posted, the shocking part to me is that ESPN has in their contract the right to opt out of this entire deal and effectively destroy the ACC after 2 more seasons. And all they have to do is notify the ACC of this by next February. This fact became known as a result of the FSU lawsuit, and if the ACC did not disclose this fact to the member schools when they signed the contract, that is probably a breach of their fiduciary duties to the schools and could very well be used by the schools as legal grounds to have their grant of rights agreement voided by the courts. Mr. McLovin, I appreciate you for the comment and the sweet reference to Superbad there. I also agree that it is an absolute train wreck that the ACC leaders, completely independent of the members, put itself in a position where ESPN can unilaterally end the media deal. And just to remind everybody, they can exercise this option from any time from now until February 2025. And if they do exercise it, it takes effect in 2027. So the bottom line is this: if ESPN pulls the pin on this grenade, it absolutely destroys the ACC. And I think it's safe to say the conference would quickly move to end all of the cases that are currently being brought up against it. So next up, from our mailbag, Blake posted the following. Clemson wouldn't even have started this process yet unless they already talked to someone in the SEC or the Big 10 about a landing spot. I hate all of this. College football was just perfect a few years ago. I'm 47-year-old and a Clemson fan lifelong. I've always loved the ACC. Some of the greatest athletes in different sports ever have come out of the ACC over the years. Blake, I appreciate you for the comment. I think you're absolutely right here. Clemson is making this move. It's a clear sign that they have received a green light from somebody either within the Big 10 or the SEC, or maybe somebody related, somebody at a network. I don't think they do this without a landing spot. I don't think you can risk it without a landing spot. As far as hating what's happening, I get it. I get it completely. As somebody who has followed and covered the ACC for a long time, man, I always was upset with the ACC because I always thought the officials stunk. I always wanted them to be a little bit better. But, man, there was a little bit of a pride there. Not quite as weird as the SEC pride that happened. Sorry for our SEC folks watching. But there was a little bit of pride, right, in the conference that you were in. You wanted your conference to do well. I never had a problem cheering for Clemson. Never had a problem cheering for NC State or any of the programs within it. Even in basketball, people hate Duke and Carolina. You still wanted them to do well because it was good for the conference. But at this point, it is a necessary evil, right? We can hate it all we want, but we understand that, man, this is the way that things are trending. And it sucks. I agree with you on that. Next up from our mailbag, TN Buckeye posted, the Big Ten has 9 teams they could send down to Clemson and FSU until 2036 that would make the ACC cry. The SEC has 8 or 9 teams that could make the ACC cry until 2036. Once they leave the ACC, there's nothing that says they can't join the SEC or Big Ten, with all of their big games being away games until the ACC contract runs out. The more people that begin to sympathize with Clemson and FSU, the more the leading conferences would be willing to play dirty with the ACC. I don't really see this as being necessary because I think the ACC will settle or get nothing as their top teams leave. TN Buckeye, I appreciate you for the comment. I think you're absolutely correct here. I've stated that before. It's been determined by the grant of rights that it only covers home games. So if push comes to shove, a team can pull the lever and eject if another conference is willing to take them without their home games rights. Will this be necessary? I'm not sure. I think Clemson and Florida State are probably in a good enough spot now where this final option is not going to have to be used, but knowing the option is pretty strong incentive for the ACC to avoid it. Next up from our mailbag, Alexa posted, I strongly believe that this is the worst situation for the ACC. They should have tried to get a deal done just like the Big 12 and Texas and Oklahoma did. It looks like the whole conference might be able to leave free of charge, especially with the TV contract ending and ESPN cutting that in 2 years. Alexa, I appreciate you for the comment. Shout out the ladies that tune in and watch as well. Absolutely 100% agree with you here. The ACC should be shifting itself right now into preservation mode, or it's risking the Pac-12 like death. Apparently, they learned nothing from the Pac-12 situation. If the ACC was smart, they would have spent more time working on merging with the Big 12 and less time fighting with their own members. In fact, I believe that the longer they fight, the longer that this goes on, the more likely they are to end up in the group of 5. Next up from our mailbag, Photo 2 posted, the state of Florida lawmakers need to get more involved. ESPN, Disney need to be exposed. Florida sunshine laws. Photo 2, thank you for the comment. I believe that Florida politics very much is in play here. I believe the governor of Florida and many of the powerful lobbyists in the state are putting pressure on ESPN, making sure ESPN isn't going to extend that contract, that option they have with the ACC. Now, this isn't a political channel, and I'm not going to go into everything the Florida governor has done to Disney in the past, the parent company of ESPN, but it's definitely something you should research and look into because the state of Florida has owned Disney in many different ways. I think the political pressure on ESPN is something that a lot of talking heads at ESPN are completely missing or being told to stay silent on because they know it's probably not very good for them. Appreciate you for the comment. Next up from the mailbag, Dim Canes posted, I'm a Miami fan, and to be honest, we are bitching and complaining, but nobody forced our schools to sign the contract, though. Dim Canes, I appreciate you for the comment. Now, yeah, we're not going to blame the victims here. The ACC was dominant over the SEC in the early 90s and early 2000s. ACC leadership and the Swaffords' incompetency is what really failed us, and they failed to capitalize on the ACC being a very powerful program. Nobody is arguing that we didn't sign the contract. We did. We all signed it, and we all agreed to it. The problem is that you have an issue now with the ACC fulfilling their end of the contract. That's what FSU and Clemson and others that will file suit, that's what their big complaint is. It's not that we didn't sign the agreements. The complaint is that the ACC is not holding up their end of the bargain, that the ACC is not being responsible financially and getting Florida State and Clemson what they should get and what the other members of this conference should be getting. Finally, our last one from the mailbag, Daniel posted, he said, I'm not an attorney. However, I think this defines the ACC contract. It's an unconscionable contract is a contract that is so severely one-sided and unfair to one of the parties that it is deemed unenforceable under the law. In contract law, this means that the contract is one that leaves one of the parties with no real meaningful choice, typically due to significant decreases in bargaining power between the parties to the contract. One of the main characteristics of these contracts is that one of the parties signed a contract when the situation involved pressure, lack of information, or because they were misled. Daniel, thank you so much for the comment. I agree. I think that the ACC falls right in this category. And if this case takes place in Florida's jurisdiction, and if FSU attorneys, as they've said in their filings, if the judge finds the buyout to be unconscionable and unrealistic, the entire buyout gets wiped, and the ACC gets nothing. We've talked about liquidated damages. We've talked about other aspects of this. But yes, I agree. I think it is very one-sided. I think that there was pressure, and there weren't a lot of options there. Should some of these schools have signed it? Of course not. We know that now. But does that mean that the ACC shouldn't have to hold up their end of the bargain? Of course not. Of course they should have to do their part and continuing fulfilling their obligations. Listen, I appreciate all of you who wrote in. I appreciate the comments on this channel. They are fantastic. I run other channels that do other things. The comments on this channel are so good, and you guys are awesome. There's a lot of different perspectives, which I like a lot. So continue to do that. I really do appreciate it. And let us know what else you want to talk about on this conference realignment subject, on Clemson, UNC, Florida State, all of the different players in this drama. I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. Thank you to everybody who commented. Thank you to those that we read your comments. We'll talk to you soon here on College Football Addiction.